as we get closer to the NFL draft here, just over a week for that first round, it's becoming less clear who is going to be taken in the top 3. And that's not something we usually see in the NFL draft. Last year, it was pretty bang on who they were going to get. Top 3 picks were all going to be quarterbacks, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's how it went. And that benefited the Patriots. They got Drake May, number 3. And I think it was a hell of a pick. In fact, you could argue all 3 of those quarterbacks still have very bright futures ahead of them. But now this year at number 4, it looked like for a point you were going to get Travis Hunter to fall there. Now it doesn't look like that. And this whole time you were thinking maybe Travis Hunter, not Abdul Carter. But within the last week or so, teams have soured on Abdul Carter, or at least that's what we have heard through the media. And there's always some kind of smoke this time of year, but there have been stories coming out about Abdul Carter from people who followed him and covered him in college, people who worked with him in college, and this is not going away. Talks of him being uncoachable, not a practice player, not a guy who's going to put in the work during the week, but a supreme talent. That's what's going to have him taken in the top 5 no matter what. Is that unbelievable talent that he has to possibly be a game wrecker at the NFL level. But these stories are not going away of him being a head case, him being uncoachable, him being, difficult with teammates. Now the question becomes, will the Patriots swallow that pill if he's available at number 4? No one expected him to be available at number 4, but if he is, do you just take on all the crap that comes with him? Albert Breer has been covering this inside and out. Obviously, one of the NFL draft experts. He has heard a lot about this Carter situation. Here's what he's saying about how the Patriots might handle this or how they should handle this.
Are the character concerns or whatever they may be, are they valid?
They're valid. I do not think they're enough to pass on a talent like this whatsoever. I think you'd be idiotic because of what that position is. You need, in all likelihood, at some point, they're going to need a great player at that position. It's a premium position. Most great defenses have guys like that. And, the reality is exactly what Phil said, which a lot of those guys are different. Myles Garrett is a very different guy. Maybe one of the best 5 players at any position in the NFL. Micah Parsons isn't all that well liked in the Cowboys building. TJ Watt is very into him. So there's just, with every single one of them, there's something, and I don't know why it's specific to that position, but that's what you get. And so I think it's something eventually you're going to have to deal with. Do you want to deal with it in the first year under Mike Vrabel? Ideally, no. But this is too high end of talent to pass on.
Here's what I go back and forth on with this, because I think he's right in that Abdul Carter is too big a talent to not take him if he falls that low to him. I understand that argument entirely. And I know where the Patriots are at. They are in full rebuild mode again, right? This is not a team that is competing for a Super Bowl in the next year or two. But you bring in a new coach in Mike Vrabel, and he talks about culture and all this, and you have the franchise quarterback that you are trying to build towards that within the next 4 or 5 years of being really in contention to win the Super Bowl. That's what this is about. And the players he mentions in there that are studs at this position, great pass rushers, game wreckers is the term I keep using. You want to draft a game wrecker in the top 5. Those guys are great. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, TJ Watt. They've not played in a Super Bowl. None of them have. And so here's the thing I keep wrestling with as a Patriots fan that's, moved on from the Super Bowl titles, the dynasty, the Belichick-Brady dynasty. But that's the frame of reference we have for a competitor, is what Belichick and Brady built. And those teams didn't necessarily have that guy. Richard Seymour in the early years was definitely the closest. And Vince Wilfork was a game wrecker in a very less sexy way at nose tackle. But they didn't have those guys. They tried in terms of the 3-4 linebacker with Roosevelt Colvin and guys like that, but they didn't have that. They didn't have a dominant pass rusher like some teams have now. And I look at what they did value, and that was smart, versatile defensive players. And obviously, Abdul Carter has the talent, all the talent in the world. And I don't know that I have the balls to pass on him at number 4. But I've talked a lot about Jalon Walker the last couple of weeks. Like, Jalon Walker fits that mold. He absolutely does. He fits the versatile defensive guy who can play a couple of different places on the field for you. Super athletic, just as athletic, if not more athletic, than Abdul Carter, who is seen as one of the great athletes in this draft and can run down the opposing quarterbacks. And, he's not necessarily the game wrecker pass rusher, but he can do a lot of things for you at a really high level, it looks like. And the best thing he can do, at least in college, was getting after the quarterback. So I think it's something worth thinking about here. That is that the mold we can still win with, that model of the way, Bill Belichick did things? Or do you need to have that guy? Because I mentioned those 3 that Breer mentioned, right? Probably the top 3 pass rushers still in the NFL, and you maybe want to include Aiden Hutchinson somewhere around there too, of Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson. None of those guys have played in the Super Bowl, but Chris Jones has. Chris Jones has won a couple. Aaron Donald won one recently. So it is still part of the blueprint, it looks like. But it just, and maybe this is my Patriots naivete of growing up in the time that I did and watching this team year in, year out in the Belichick era. But I just see so much value in Jalon Walker without the baggage. Abdul Carter has all the talent in the world. And I still understand why people would be like, screw the bag. Lawrence Taylor had baggage 40 years ago. All these guys, these great players have baggage. I understand that argument. But if I propose to you a Jalon Walker, a guy who is, by all accounts from analysts, not that much of a drop-off, not a dramatic drop-off from Abdul Carter in terms of just overall talent, obviously playing at 2 different positions, and he can bring you leadership qualities and doesn't have the baggage, for all the crap that Mike Vrabel has been preaching about culture and accountability and draining the swamp, for lack of a better term, and getting the guys who don't have that culture out of here, then I think it would be a pretty interesting move to use your first draft pick as head coach of the Patriots on a guy who does not fit that. And there are people talking on radio about, oh, well, I don't care what he does during the week. He's going to be a game day performer. And again, I'll dip back into the well of the Patriot way. Ernie Adams, I think one of the great quotes about the NFL in general is, there's no such thing as a Sunday player. There just isn't. And that's not just the Patriots of the Belichick era. Any successful team will tell you that. There's no such thing as a guy who just shows up on Sundays. Those guys don't play. They don't last in this league. And there are some that can skate by on talent alone for a little while, right? We see it all the time. But those guys, A, have to have the top 1% of talent, which Abdul Carter might well have. And B, they become journeymen. They don't become studs on Super Bowl teams. They become Jags. They become guys who don't get that big second contract. They just bounce around. You can talk about all the baggage you want with Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. Those aren't Sunday players. Those guys come out every day of the week and put in the work. They might be full of themselves a little bit, but they're not uncoachable. It's annoying that Micah Parsons has a podcast that he talks about the team every week while the team's losing and the teammates don't like it. It's annoying, I'm sure, to the Browns that Myles Garrett, is like, I'm going to leave. I don't believe in the direction of this team until you give me money. That stuff's annoying, but it's not uncoachable. It's not guys who are dramatically destroying your locker room. Although maybe Mike is doing that. That locker room in Dallas is a mess. It's not that. And Abdul Carter could be bringing that if all these reports are true. A guy who doesn't want to work, that's not a culture setter. And we have seen good teams, not just the Patriots, but good teams in this league over a long time say that's not worth it for us. The talent is great, but we need winners in here. And the Patriots have a distinct lack of winners, of course. They don't have any winners in that locker room. And I don't know, if you're presenting it to me of, hey, here's the A+ guy, the can't miss guy that you should be counting your blessings you're getting at 4, but he's going to be a massive headache, versus here's the A- guy who did win in college, by the way, who is part of a winning culture and was a great contributor to that winning culture, a guy who his former coaches are calling a coach on the field, a coach in the position room, just the consummate pro at the college level, and can bring you a ton of versatility. And by the way, not for nothing, doesn't have an injury history so far. Abdul Carter kind of does. I'm leaning towards that A- guy. Maybe I'm just too caught up in what the Patriots used to be, but that guy just absolutely fits the mold. That A- guy, Jalon Walker, fits the mold of what Mike Vrabel is saying he's trying to build. Whether they're actually going to do that or not, that's whether it's lip service or not. That's what Mike Vrabel's telling us. That's what Elliott Wolf is telling us, that they're looking for culture guys who can also be that top echelon. And I think most people would agree with Breer in saying it's idiotic to pass up on him, because we think about it in the simplest terms. I used this talking about Chaim Bloom last week with the Red Sox. You remember in 2021, the Red Sox were picking at 4, and their guy, Jack Leiter, was already gone, but the guy who was originally the number 1 prospect of the draft, Marcelo Meyer, was still there. It's like, don't overthink it. Just pick the kid. Maybe that's what this is with the Patriots at 4, because for a long time it was Abdul Carter going to be number 1 for the Titans, and still it kind of goes back and forth with him and Cam Ward. It seems like for sure it's going to be Cam Ward to Tennessee now, and now it becomes, don't overthink this. Just pick that guy at 4 if he's there. And they said the visit went well. Of course they're going to say the visit went well. But if he's there at 4, I think the Patriots still draft him. If he's not there at 4, which I do think is more likely, I don't think he gets to 4. Jalon Walker is the guy. I'm hoping it's not Will Campbell. I'm hoping they just hyped up Will Campbell just to feed us some lines. But I've just, the more I see and the more I read on this kid, again, not a scout, but the more I see him and the more I read up on this kid, the more I want Jalon Walker to be the guy. And I use this example with Will Campbell. Like, if Will Campbell's not the 4th pick, he could well drop into the 20s. If Jalon Walker's not the 4th pick, he's going to be like the 6th pick. He's going to be like the 7th pick. The basement for him is still inside the top 10, unless there's a picture of him smoking weed out of a gas mask on draft night, right? And I think if Abdul Carter drops to 4, the issues might be bigger than all of us think, because there really isn't any reason talent-wise that he should drop to number 4 in the draft, especially with those teams not thinking quarterback, with 2 and 3 not thinking quarterback. It just doesn't seem like there's any way that Jalon Walker would drop to number 4. But I am fascinated to see how the Patriots handle that end of things. I do want to hear what you guys have to think. Let me know in the comment section below. Would they be idiotic to pass up on Abdul Carter at number 4 in the draft? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Kim Stewart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content 5 days a week. So check out the other videos on the channel on YouTube, where we are live at high noon Eastern time every weekday, and then available wherever you get your podcasts.